Well, hello. It's good to be here in Dallas. My first time here. I bring greetings from my colleagues at Unitarian Universalist headquarters in Boston, where it's much chillier than it is here. And thanks from us and from 1,000 congregations in our movement. One of the things that happens in our large churches are what I often call flagship congregations, and you're one of them. You're the fifth largest Unitarian Universalist congregation in our movement, is that the members of it really don't realize how important they are to the larger movement. You're a resource, you're a source of inspiration, you're a model. This congregation has a long and distinguished history of mentoring other congregations and of mentoring religious professionals and especially ministers. I know that Daniel has participated in programs for large congregations and congregation-to-congregation monitoring in one of our programs. Your previous minister, Laurel Hallman, has been a leader and continues to lead in this, working with the Ministers Association. And incidentally, Laurel lives down the street about 2 blocks from UUA headquarters now, and I see her occasionally. I just saw her Thursday evening, and we had a nice chat. In fact, she looked so tanned and rested, I almost asked for a recount. She's doing very well. This morning, I'm going to talk about what getting religion might mean for religious liberals like us. But first, I want to take us back 270 years, because something really important happened in 1740, something that shaped American religion and shaped Unitarian Universalism to this day. Because in 1740, our religious ancestors became those other people. And we've been those other people ever since. The great religious dance of American history started playing a new song in 1740. And when it did, we stood along the wall and watched. And the results have been tragic. Okay, I exaggerate a little bit. Yes, we were very important in the 19th century. Our religious voice played an essential role in the abolition of slavery and later in the struggle for women's suffrage. And we played an important part, although a smaller one, in the civil rights movement of the last century. And indeed today we have much more influence on great moral issues than our numbers would predict. Issues like LGBT rights, marriage equality, environmental justice, economic justice, and the great moral issue of immigration. We do good work, and we should be proud of that. But we sat out the big dance that started in 1740, and we've never really gotten back on the floor. And the result is that we've spent almost 3 centuries on the margins. And today, when spirituality in America lurches between rabid fundamentalism on the one hand and vapid consumerism on the other, today we don't even show up on most checklists of religious preference. We fall under the category of other. So now we are officially the other people. So what the heck happened in 1740, you might be asking? And why does it matter in 2012? And most importantly, how do we get back onto the dance floor? In 1740, our religious forebears were at the very center of American religion. And then like a contagious fever, a religious passion swept over the land. Historians call it the Great Awakening. And men like the itinerant revivalist George Whitefield of England and the Puritan Jonathan Edwards of Northampton, Massachusetts, preached a religion of sinful humans needing to be overwhelmed by guilt so that God's grace could save them from eternal damnation. Some of you may remember reading Jonathan Edwards' famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. maybe in high school. Here's a brief reminder, an excerpt. The God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath towards you burns like fire. He looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the fire, and so forth. This was religion of powerful emotions, of terror, of ecstasy, of tears, of hearing God's voice, and of being born again. And how did our religious ancestors respond to this passionate religion? Why, we looked on in shock and dismay at all this unseemly behavior. We wrote essays criticizing the expression of strong emotion in church. We insisted that religion was, at its core, a, quote, calm and reasonable thing, unquote. We kept our cool and indeed became God's frozen people. The truth is, all of this emotion made us very uneasy, very uncomfortable. What does make us comfortable is a good discussion. And I would recommend the Bylaws Forum this afternoon for those of you so inclined. And we stood like timid wallflowers at the big religious dance, discussing how others were making fools of themselves. And it went on without us. Okay, I know all of this is an exaggeration, and worse yet, I am committing the grievous UU sin of oversimplifying. And yes, I know that my caricature is unfair to our Universalist ancestors. They were out there, at least early in the 19th century, passionately preaching inclusion and universal love. They danced with the great unwashed for a while, but eventually they joined their Unitarian cousins chatting at the wall while the big dance went on. The evangelicals and fundamentalists are the inheritors of the great passions of the Great Awakening. They make up about a quarter of Americans, but make more noise than anyone else. For a long time, the mainline churches, Methodists, Presbyterians, United Church of Christ, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Baptists, especially the progressive ones, were the more measured and respectable inheritance of that great tradition. They believed more or less in conversion and sin, in the authority of Scripture, but they tended to avoid the emotional excesses. The Unitarians and the Universalists finally united 50 years ago. And while we have islands of wonderful vitality, and this congregation is a shining example of that, we have declined slowly as a percentage of America's religious landscape. And so this has remained fairly stable until very recently. And today, all of this is falling apart before our eyes. Our neighbors of the main line are in something of a free fall. They lose members by the millions every year. And despite all the noise they make in politics and what we've come to know as the culture wars, the evangelicals are not growing. They've actually declined slightly in the last 20 years. And immigration has had a huge impact on religion in America. The Catholic Church is losing white members by the millions, but they're being largely offset by a great influx of Latinos. And of course, the number of Muslims has grown dramatically. But you know who's really growing? Who is really growing are the nuns. That's the N-O-N-E-S, not the N-U-N-S. The nuns. In the last decade alone, the number of young adults who claim no religious identity has doubled from 12 to 25%. Now take that in for a moment. It sounds like just another number, another statistic as it flies by. The number of young adults claiming no religious identity has doubled in the last decade. And I want to put that in perspective. In the half century between 1950, just after the Second World War, and 2000, the number of young adults claiming no religious identity went from 3%, only 3%, to 12%, 9% growth in 50 years, and then doubled in the last decade. The religious structure of America is disintegrating before our eyes. There's a new kind of great awakening occurring, but it's completely different from the first one. On the one hand, it ought to scare us to death, but more importantly, it should fill us with hope, because this is a historic opportunity to get back in the dance. I've said many times that Unitarian Universalism can be the religion for our time. And that's not just a slogan, it's a conviction. I think culturally, as a religious movement, we have to do three great things. Three great things to become the vital movement that we seek to be. We have to get religion, grow leaders, and cross borders. And by crossing borders, I mean the borders of social class and the borders of culture. But today I want to talk about the first and the most important one, which is to get religion. But what can get religion mean for a liberal faith, a faith that values reason and science? By get religion, I mean that we've got to stop being the other people, the people at the margins. We must be a passionately religious people offering a compelling religious alternative in an age in which compassionate and thoughtful people are increasingly fed up with religious institutions. We have something that's precious and essential to offer the world, but we have to start with ourselves. So what must we do? What steps do we have to take to do what I call getting religion, to be the people that we long to be, and to be a powerful healing force in our world? Well, here are the steps that I believe are essential. I believe we have to shut up, pay attention, reach out, get lost, and be faithful. Shut up, pay attention, reach out, get lost, be faithful. Let's begin with shut up. And yes, I'm aware that it's ironic to be preaching about shutting up. And I'm sure some wit out there is about to suggest that I practice what I preach. But all of the great religions teach that it is essential to shut up. They tell us to make time for deep reflection, whether it's prayer, meditation, study, spiritual retreats, or dozens of other practices. Because it's only when we stop, really stop, that we can touch what is essential, what's holy. Your practice may be different from mine. I, for example, find that simple, beautiful, quiet, wordless music transports me into a different realm, a realm away from the world of words in which I live so much. We have to learn to turn off the television, turn off the computer, turn off the radio, turn off the smartphone, stop texting, and most of all, stop multitasking. If we're going to get religion, we have to set aside time for reflection and spiritual practice. We have to shut up. And the next step, which follows naturally and inevitably, is to pay attention. We have to pay attention to ourselves first. We have to get in touch with our feelings, in touch with our bodies. And our attention then has to expand to the people that are around us, the people we love, the people who love us. But if we really pay attention, if we take enough time and truly open ourselves, we become aware of so many more things. We notice our surroundings. We notice the air we breathe, the sounds that are around us. We notice the world of living things. We see ourselves in the context of history and of the cosmos. And then, too, when our hearts are truly open, we see suffering. We see injustice. We see how we hurt one another. We feel how very much you and I and everyone else is connected. We shut up. We pay attention. And the next step, I think, is to reach out. And again, I believe it follows naturally from paying deep attention. When I truly understand how linked I am to you, when I'm deeply aware of how you and I are shaped by our world, when I really get it, that we both share a common destiny on this little blue planet of ours, then I want to reach out. I want to know you. I want to understand you. And eventually, to really love you. I also want to reach out and to deepen my connections with the people in my congregation and my larger faith community. Religion, I've been told, is derived from the Latin word to bind. Our religion is what binds us together. Our religion is about who we are together, what we do together, about what unites us and what transcends us. For us UUs, that means connecting with the people in the next pew, but also our cousins across this country and beyond. When we reach out, we become bound together by love and by common purpose. And when we reach out and connect, we become deeper and stronger. Shut up, pay attention, reach out. What's next? Next, I think we need to get lost. Once again, this is the lesson that's taught by all of the great spiritual traditions. The lesson they all teach us is that we really find ourselves when we lose ourselves. The same lesson is shown to us all the time by the people around us who have lost themselves in service to some great cause, to some great idea. Think for a moment about your own life. I bet that every one of us in here, every one of us has experienced this. Think about a time when you stopped thinking about your own desires, a time that you gave yourself in the service to someone you loved, or you worked selflessly for something that you cared about deeply. Those are the blessed times of life, the times we feel truly alive. We only find ourselves when we lose ourselves. Shut up, pay attention, reach out, get lost. The last step is really all of the previous steps over and over again. The last step is being faithful. You know, we've been taught that faith is about believing things, often things that are pretty darned hard to believe. Actually, faith is not about believing things. Faith isn't something you believe or something you have. Faith is a relationship. Faith is about being faithful. You know, think about it. Jesus, Moses, Mohammed, the Buddha, all of the great prophets never showed any interest in what people thought or believed. These are people who were not concerned with fine points of doctrine. They cared a lot about what people did. Our great religious task is to be faithful. Faithful to what we love most dearly in life. Faithful to what we believe makes life worth living. Faithful to our ideals of a world that lives in harmony and peace and where everyone is loved and valued. I don't care much about what you believe. I don't care much whether you call yourself a theist or an agnostic or a pagan or a Christian or a humanist or none of the above. I care about what you love. My religious challenge, our religious challenge, is to know what we love and then be faithful to what we love. When we are faithful to what we love, we have gotten religion. And we will have gotten all of the religion that we will ever need. When we get in touch with what we love and are faithful to what we hold sacred in life, our lives are rich, our lives are blessed, and we become a powerful blessing to the world. We have a historic opportunity to touch lives and to help heal our world. We don't have to be the other guys. But first, we have to get religion before we can be the religion for our time. We have to shut up, pay attention, reach out, get lost, be faithful. So may it be.